Welcome to Screams and Streams, the podcast that looks at the best and worst horror movies as rated on Rotten Tomatoes from 1970s onwards. I'm your host, Mike Karen, and with me is my co-host,
Chad Campbell.
And today we have our special guest,
Sam Schreiner.
Before we get to today's film, we'd like to invite you to check us out on Instagram. Our handle is @ScreamStreamPod. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.screamsandstreams.com. That's ScreamsandStreams.com, where we have information about our episodes, links to our research, and our watchability scale, where we rank all of the films we are looking at. And please be sure to rate, comment on, and subscribe to our show on any of the platforms where you get your podcasts. Just a warning, in the podcast, we do jump around in the plot when we are discussing the details, and we may end up spoiling the film if you haven't had the chance to see it yet. If you are someone who doesn't like spoilers, we recommend that you stop listening now, check out the film, and then rejoin us for our discussion. Today, we are looking at Tobe Hooper's 1974 film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It scored 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, so let's get into it. Chad, if you want to start us off with a summary of the film.
Sure, there are multiple summaries from IMDb. This one that I really liked was from Michael Brook, and it says, en route to visit their grandfather's grave, which has apparently been ritualistically desecrated, 5 teenagers drive past a slaughterhouse, pick up and quickly drop a sinister hitchhiker, eat some delicious home-cured meat at a roadside gas station before ending up at the old family home, where they're plunged into a never-ending nightmare as they meet a family of cannibals who more than make up in power tools for what they lack in social skills.
Nice.
Right? I thought that was really well done.
That's clever. I like it.
I like that he mentions the slaughterhouse because it doesn't go back to it, but those scenes were upsetting.
Oh, yeah,
those shots
sure.
of the cows drooling and foaming. And Sam, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to start with our first impressions of the film, and I'm going to take us out of the gate on this one. I do have to say that this is the second time that I've watched this movie, but it's been 38 years since the last time I watched this. I was 7. The first time I saw this.
Just a baby.
My parents, we'd go to parties at their friend's house and the kids would all be in the basement, and I was 7 and the next youngest person was 13 and the oldest person was 18. And so they'd watch movies, and if I wanted to hang out with the kids, I had to watch what they watched. And so, yeah, I had to watch this and many other horror films in this basement. My first impression when I was 7, it scared the shit out of me. I didn't remember much of the movie, but Leatherface in the yellow apron, the white mask that he wears for the start of the film just was burned into my mind. So that's my first impression as a 7-year-old. I don't have a lot of memories. Rewatching it just a few days ago, though, it was almost like a first impression. I was blown away. Up till now with the films that we've watched, they've felt very of their time. The effects were off. The gore was off. There were things that I can complain about. This felt like the first true horror film that we did. It was complete and what I knew of horror, or what horror really was. I'll stop there. We have a lot more to add to this, but I think for first impression, that's all.
I think that's fair. And, I felt the same way. I remember watching this, but when I watched it, I was 4, so I was a little older, but I always remembered that scene where he grabs the guy. He kind of stumbles up the walkway and he grabs the guy and pulls him into that back room and then closes that metal door in that yellow apron and that weird mask. It still freaks me out. When I watched it again, it freaked me out again. I watched that. I was, oh my God, this guy is so crazy. It is. I think it kind of falls under the first slasher as far as horror goes. We've reviewed some horror movies which were, I guess, a little more
thrillers or psychological or
murder mysteries where they put them under the horror genre. But this has been the first one where you're like, oh my God, this is crazy and really scary. That was my second impression, I guess.
Sam, if you want to share your first impressions.
So this film actually has a special place in my heart. I love this movie. I haven't watched it in years. I also watched it for the first time probably when I was 12 or 13. I don't know if anyone was a preteen in the mid 2000s, but I was. And we had this thing called notebooking, where the movie The Notebook, the romance movie, came out. And if you were interested in a guy, you would notebook them. I may have done that a couple times, but then I moved on, escalated maybe, and I Texas Chainsaw them.
Texas Chainsawed. I like that.
So sorry, Kevin, Sean, and I'm sure there were a few others there as well. But I watched this movie quite a few times to suss it out and see if, people were into it. At the same time, I don't even remember. I think I took a law class and we were allowed to research serial killers, which is kind of interesting for my pretty conservative Catholic junior high school. But I actually did my research project on Ed Gein.
Yes, yeah.
And did my research on that, which we'll probably get into as a little bit of maybe some inspiration on it. Maybe not. We shall see.
Yeah, there's a bit of disagreement on whether Ed Gein was the inspiration for this or not. And
yes.
Tobe Hooper in 2 of the commentaries says oppositional things on that. So
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually
That's
been like a point of contention too. Like a lot of people don't really know, which is kind of interesting too. So I haven't seen it since those awkward junior high days and high school, I guess too. Maybe I did this too many times, but yeah, I just started rewatching it for this podcast.
Your notebooking film is a lot better than mine. I used to use Pi by Darren Aronofsky to test whether or not somebody would be worth sticking with.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I stayed single for a long time.
Yeah. I'm sure I scared a few off too. Don't worry. Like, she's crazy, man.
We watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Just watch people get slaughtered on our first date.
This movie really speaks to me.
I really resonate with the characters.
Our next category is the Tropes Hall of Shame. In this category, we look at those things that we have seen over and over again in horror movies. What's been done to death, and what are the things that take the suspense and originality out of the viewing experience? Sam, why don't you start us off on this one?
I think the hitchhiker, the broken down vehicle, I think we see that all the time. It's actually a fear of mine, so it's legit. I do think that it stands the test of time as well, because it is something, I don't know, as a female, maybe that's just something on my end, but from this movie, be anyone. So yeah.
On that one, in the audio commentary, they talked about this, and the state of Texas, like the highway patrols, did credit Texas Chainsaw Massacre for a decrease in crime of 18% after its release. And they legitimately think it's because fewer people were picking up hitchhikers.
Yeah, that's fair. After watching the film also. Yeah, that's a eyes down, focus on the road type thing anytime you see someone. Sorry.
I don't know. It's funny because my brother-in-law used to hitchhike all the time, and he would get driven from camp down into Lloydminster or into Saskatchewan. And, you always depend on the kindness of strangers. But man, that guy, in fact, I have in one of my notes, why would you ever pick that guy up? Is what I said. Because he just looks fucked.
Yeah.
Oh, just because he has a birthmark?
No. Did you see like the way he's walking, the way he's moving?
His shoulder bag is a dead animal?
Man, I would not.
Anyone that has like a full dead animal around their neck is their shoulder bag.
Right.
You don't pick up.
And then they take him in the van and they keep him in there despite all the weird shit that he says. Like, I was just, no.
Sam, what else do you have?
I also said the female survivor. Okay, we see that in everyone, so I don't think that needs much explanation. I think the Southern hillbilly family, we see that quite often as well in these films. Of course, the portrayal of people in the southern states, and of course with that tying in that Leatherface is like an oaf, right?
Thank you, Sam, for those. I'm going to share a couple of mine. My first one is right off the bat, the film has that opening crawl that claims that this is based on true events. And at the time, I think that was maybe more of an original thing because people still claim that, oh, I knew the real Leatherface. There's correctional officers who will go to events and go up to Tobe Hooper and be like, I worked with Leatherface once he got caught. And, I was on his block.
Oh, yeah.
And Tobe Hooper's like, it's not real. It's like, no, it was. It's been done, right? Like Blair Witch, that was their entire marketing thing. And we have that whole found footage mid-2000s thing of like, this was real. So that was my first trope. And then the second one that I had was the gas station attendant warning about the danger that was coming.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, don't go down that road there. That road there is dangerous.
They don't want to go into that house.
We've seen that so many times. Again, in 1974, we hadn't seen it that much, but by now, watching this in 2023, it's Tucker and Dale versus evil for the first 15 minutes of this film, and that whole thing is making fun of horror tropes. Those are my two. Chad, do you want to give us some of yours?
So I agree, Sam, the portrayal of the podunk country bumpkin. They really nail that home in this one. It always reminds me of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles when I watch these old films when that guy's like, people train don't run out of Wichita. People train run out of Kansas. Every single one of them, it seems like that. Down, 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 down. But I don't know if that's necessarily because I'm looking through this 2023 lens where I've seen so many movies that portray these people like this. In 1974, would I have watched this and been like, oh yeah, this is overdone? Or would I watch it and be, maybe they are really like that?
We don't go to the southern states.
We just don't go down there.
We don't go to Texas.
Well, it's, pre-internet, obviously. By
for sure.
20 or more years. You don't have the media that we have now. You don't have as much exposure on television. So I think for someone that lived in like the Midwest or Northeast United States, they might look at that and just, I am never going to Texas.
Right. This is how they are.
I also would never go to Texas after watching this movie, and I'm not going to hitchhike there for sure.
Well, again, in the audio commentaries, Tobe Hooper and Daniel Pearl, he's the cinematographer, Tobe Hooper's the director, they talk very frequently about how they always thought, even though they were portraying this as a fiction of this family that was crazy, like, they were worried about rednecks. They were worried about, like, we are outsiders. We're from California. We are clearly not of this place.
Right.
And they felt scared.
Oh, okay.
And it might have been in their heads. They don't know. But there was this sort of air of, it's not safe.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting take, but I do think the portrayal of them has been, done to death. The other thing was the screaming throughout the whole thing. I know everybody is scared, but the lady running through the woods and she falls. And there's an interesting thing about that. Apparently, they said that the guy who plays the murderer, what was his name, Mike?
Gunnar Hansen.
I know you'd know that. He, even at his slowest, could outrun the main actress. And so he was always trying to do busy work to try to make it look like she was faster than him. And he was cutting down the
little twigs.
And it was like, with that chainsaw And so that was kind of funny. The other thing I thought was when they go and get gas, the guy says, oh, there's no more gas. And they all just say, well, we're just going to keep going.
Not back to Newt where there was gas.
No, we're just going to keep going forward. He also gives them the red flag. He throws it up there. Nobody wants to go there. You shouldn't go there.
Don't do it.
We're going to go. So those were my big ones.
Sam, do you have any others?
Yeah. Oftentimes you see in horror movies going into someone's house uninvited. Why are we just going into some person's house? And they opened the door and saw all the skulls on the wall. And they're like, let's go in here. You see this all the time with these movies. And whether the door is slightly ajar, if a door is ajar, you call the police. You do not enter that house, no matter who you're looking for, no matter what you need. If the door is ajar, where there's insects roaming and it's hot, you leave. Okay.
So if you hear pig squealing noises, you don't go farther in to
Absolutely not. Like I said, maybe they deserve it.
Well, especially in that scene where he walks in, he knocks on the door, nobody answers, knocks again, nobody answers. He walks in, he looks to the left, and he sees all these bones and feathers and these stings. And he's like, well, let's just keep going in. No, I would be running the other way.
The opening of the screen door to knock on the physical door, to me, even that is too far. I did door knocking for a political campaign, and we had to leave information inside the door. And people were like, oh, just open the screen door and then close the screen door on the information. That way the house owner gets it. And I thought, this is such a violation to open a screen door, even though there's a fully locked door behind it. So yeah, when you're like, don't go in,
walking fully
when the door is shut.
Hello.
Hi, just checking it out. And then keeps going. And then my last one was, in a lot of horror movies, we often see like some couples, especially in slasher films, there's always couples. And then there's the one person who's brought along. So in this case, it's Franklin, but sometimes it's the little brother that you have to take trick-or-treating. Right. Okay. Or you have to babysit your sister that night, those types of things. So I think that's done quite often. Yeah.
And what an annoying person to bring along.
Oh my Lord. I made a note about that guy. I was like, why is the disabled guy so annoying? And I didn't mean it. I'm trying to say this as politically correct as I possibly can, but he was just a jackass.
The worst.
You know, the first scene where the semi truck goes by and he rolls down the hill. Can I say wiener and hands?
Yes.
Full on. And he tumbles down the hill. I was like, oh my God. And then by the end, I was like, oh,
just get rid of him.
Just cut him off. And I literally wrote in my notes, Franklin is the worst.
Yeah, there's always a guy that you cheer for to be killed in these kind of movies, right? And unfortunately, it's that guy. And he comes out and he pees. They give him a coffee can to pee into. And I guess he's gonna pee on himself if he just doesn't or on the chair. I don't know.
But also, no one's gonna help him.
But nobody's helping him. They're like, here you go.
Go on the top of a hill on the side of the road in your wheelchair, and good fucking luck. Come on.
He rolls down. Oh man.
Oh, and it was
so
longest
bad.
hill of his life.
So, again, I have so much.
With this?
Yeah. Tobe Hooper had said to Paul Partain, who plays Franklin, you're going to have to roll down the hill. And Paul's like, oh, no, not unless you do it. So Tobe Hooper's like, okay. So Tobe Hooper gets into the wheelchair and just woo down the hill. And I guess the rest of the cast is like, that looks fun. So everybody got out of the van. It took their turns in the wheelchair, like going down the hill, coming back up, going down the hill, coming back up, to the point where Paul Partain's like, okay, I can do this scene. Because at first he's like, well, shouldn't we use a stunt double? I'm like, no, it's not that bad. So that's him going down the hill.
Wow.
The other one is on the annoying piece of it. Gunnar Hansen, he was kept away from the rest of the cast on purpose. They didn't want them to see Leatherface until they saw him on screen for the first time or on film for the first time. And because they were this tight-knit group of friends, they kind of avoided him when it was off shoot time and things like that. But he visited the set a bit before he needed to be there just to get a sense of the atmosphere in this. So he was on set the day that they were at the Franklin house, and Franklin, the character, is going around on the main floor and complaining about everyone's upstairs having a good time and being really, really whiny. And I guess Gunnar Hansen's like, oh, I can't wait to kill that guy. He found him so annoying. Because all Franklin does for the movie is just, he
complains.
He just whines the whole time.
But the other thing that I will say is, I don't know how the hell he got into that house. Was there a ramp on the side? Because there was a definite elevated porch when they came in there, and he comes up there, and this may be nitpicking a little bit and being like, I don't know, but of course the house was overgrown and there was a lot of weeds and brush. But when you're going through a wheelchair, you don't climb up weeds and brush and then access an elevated porch. And so he's up there, come on guys, help me. And he's getting up there and he's rolling around and he's going side to side, and really he was chewing up the scene. That could be in my tropes. I thought it was just so much overacting, or not even tropes, but just he was really selling that.
Oh,
and then he got up there and he's like, you guys are getting, oh man, yeah.
I'm having so much fun. If I have any more, I won't be able to take it.
Yeah. Just yelling up there, and then his stories in the van.
Oh, he's the worst. And then when he starts knifing the side, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Who invited you? Why are you there?
And that was somebody from the crew's van, right? They had two vans between the crew that they were using. One was for the equipment and one was for the filming. And so Paul Partain is digging into the side of the van. Yeah. That wasn't in the script.
I'm sure the crew was just like, dude.
So he just was the worst in general.
What are you doing? Yeah. Oh, man. Well, that's unfortunate that he was really, it was improv. He was going with it. Maybe I just take this straight razor and
and he was method. So he was like that.
Oh, the whole time he was on set?
The whole time on set.
Ouch.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah. But I guess that does really bring up this hatred, right? And the cast really didn't want to hang out with him.
And I have something more on that later when we get to a later scene.
Can't wait.
Let's move on.
Okay. Now we're going to move into our next category of one-liners. These are lines from the film that stood out, either for their originality, impact, or their notability in the film. Chad, why don't you give us yours to start?
Sure. My first one was from The Hitchhiker, and it was, my family's always been in meat. Mm-hmm. So I took that one.
Yeah, that was mine as well.
Yeah, I did one
I
of
was
those too.
just, what the fuck?
Yep.
We don't know what's coming. We don't know what the story's about, but it's just that's such
Oh,
a
yeah,
good
my
meat.
family's always been in meat.
Cool.
Okay, yeah.
Cool, dude.
All right,
No
then.
thanks.
At that point, it's time to walk.
Right, Sam, do you have some?
Kind of on a similar note, there was you could have dinner with us. You like head cheese? My brother makes it real good. You'll like it. Like head cheese itself, I worked at okay. I've seen the deli meat that's come out and they sell head cheese. And just that was so unsettling to me.
Just the name of it, head cheese, just sounds nasty.
It is just boiled off the bone leftovers, then packed into a sausage, isn't it?
Well, it kind of looks like it's in Jell-O.
Oh, okay. Do you have another line, Sam?
Yeah, I loved the part after Leatherface chainsaws the door. So he chainsaws the door and they're coming back and he goes, look what your brother did to the door. Doesn't he have any respect for his home? You ruined the door, you damn fool. And there's like feathers and shit all over the place. Like that house is a hot mess.
Oh,
and he's like, damn you.
So gross inside.
No respect. Oh gosh, it's so bad. And it's like, damn you, the door. The door that wasn't even locked or anything. And someone just went in.
And barely closed. But he ruined it with his chainsaw.
Right, yeah.
How dare he?
All right. Chad, why don't you give us a couple more of yours?
Well, I had another one, which was after they kicked the hitchhiker out, eventually, was a guy looks over and he's the hippie that's driving. The poor guy that's driving the whole time during the film.
Doesn't say a word.
It doesn't say a word. And then that's the last goddamn hitchhiker I pick up. And he wasn't even really involved in the whole thing.
Nope.
He just kept driving no matter what that guy was doing in the back. He cuts himself and he's like,
Just a normal day with a hitchhiker.
Skinner driving the bus. Nonsense. One of our citizens will let us in.
He's like the dad on the road trip. Nope, we only pull over when I say. Because that bothered me. Like they're yelling for him to stop. It takes him so long to stop.
Oh,
it was the longest stop. There was no
to stop the van.
And then the drive away. Like I know they need to get the shot and the blood smear on the side, but it's like this is a slow crawl away from the hitchhiker.
Yep.
I would pin that sucker, and I know those vans don't go too fast, but they do have some pickup.
Well, they go faster than a slow walk.
Yeah. Like I'm not an expert in 1970s vehicles, but I feel anything can go faster than that.
And Sam, just finish us off.
Yeah, I have a couple more actually. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. So I appreciated there were 2 Dracula references that were made that I picked up throughout the film. So they actually mentioned that the house, the Franklin house, actually looked like the main actor's home.
The birthplace of Bela Lugosi.
Yes, that's the actual quote. Thank you for being more prepared than me. And they also mentioned that the hitchhiker was like Dracula. And they said, quote, I think we just picked up Dracula. So it's kind of interesting that they played on that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I don't think it needs much explanation, but shut up, you bitch hog. Kind of made me laugh out loud a little bit. It was a little unexpected.
All right. We're going to move on to our next category, what doesn't hold up. Here we take a look at those things in the film that feel dated with a modern viewing. They may have been fresh and original at the time, but they just don't hold up when we watch them in this day and age. Sam, why don't you give us your first one here?
I think the effects was a big one for me in terms of what the bodies looked like. So the opening scene where they're talking about the mutilation of the bodies and they're taken from the graves and they look like a candle melting in the sun. Kind of the vibe I got. And the grandpa's makeup. I thought, and I get it's the 70s, but like if we're comparing it to anything now or a little bit later on, what's actually really interesting is when I was watching the credits, because for some reason I was watching the credits, and the person who did grandfather's makeup was actually mentioned before all the rest of the makeup. And it specifically says grandfather's makeup and that person's name, which I thought was kind of interesting as well.
I think that's because the makeup took somewhere between 8 to 10 hours to apply.
It was a thick amount of makeup on that.
So my question is, in watching this the second time, was that makeup supposed to look like a mask that the killer had? Or was it supposed to be the actual grandpa? Because when I looked at it and then you see his eyes, there's definite spaces between where his eyes are and where the latex and all the makeup is. So was that another prosthetic that he was wearing, or was that supposed to be his actual face?
I thought it was supposed to be the other face. If it was supposed to be Leatherface applying something on, that's cool and kind of genius. But
they don't make any mention of what it's supposed to be. They just talked about its prosthetics. It took a long time to put on, but
well, then maybe I'm wrong. But when I watched it, I was like, that is obviously just like with Leatherface. You look at it, that's obviously a mask. It's not his face. So then when they showed the grandpa,
I just thought they did a terrible job.
I thought the same thing. I was, well, that's a mask.
And it doesn't hold up. Chad, do you have one?
My thing was, well, we've already discussed this, but the disabled guy rolling down the hill, I thought I thought it was just kind of overdone, just the longest thing ever. And because a semi scared him down the hill, you're on a road, there's multiple things going on. I don't know. I'm not buying it. So that was one of mine. Yep.
Yeah, that bothered me because I think it's Kirk is out there as well.
Yes.
And the truck drives by and all of a sudden this mud flies up and he's, and then for no reason whatsoever, it pushes Franklin down the hill. Like I've stood on the side of highways with trucks going by and I was not compelled to fall over or feel like I needed to. For me, what didn't hold up, we've talked about it, but the Maniac Hitchhiker, his acting, I know he's supposed to be crazy and he's supposed to be unsettling, but it was just, you have all these other, and I don't want to use the word nuanced performances, but Marilyn Burns, who plays Sally, I think was phenomenal. Actually, the two women, the one who plays Terry as well, I thought did great in this film. And the conversation in the vans felt very natural and very normal. And yeah, we're supposed to see this weirdo, but he was eating up the scenery. He was just too much over the top. It just doesn't feel right for the rest of the film.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sam, do you have one?
The end scene where Leatherface has the chainsaw and there's like the sunset and he's like mad, but he's dancing a little bit. He's got he's spinning around. I was like, I laughed out loud. And so I was like, there's no way this, you're ending this movie that is creepy and it's scary and it's something we should be scared of. But then he's dancing in the sunset a little bit. And so I don't know, maybe that was just me.
On that scene, there's a couple of things that came up earlier when he got to the gas station / barbecue stand, when he was chasing Sally. They'd filmed and they said, you need to do something crazy. And so he did that like crazy chainsaw dance. And they're like, oh my God, that was great.
That is the money shot. Yes. That's how we want to end this super creepy movie.
Gunnar Hansen was super proud to have come up with it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gunnar.
And so they put it in at the end of the movie and he didn't know that they cut the barbecue stand shot. Like he thought that stayed in as well. But I guess in the sunset, he danced for much longer.
That's worse.
Wow.
And again, so he was upset that it was cut in the barbecue stand, and he was upset that he's like, I danced for much longer than this, but Toby felt he needed to cut it out. It's like they should have cut the whole thing.
The same river dance, man.
Should, yeah.
Chad, do you have another one?
Oh yeah, the acting. Just in general, the acting is just piss poor. I'm sorry. There were some good moments with each character, I thought. But overall, it's just overselling, overacted. Line delivery is just harsh. There's just so many moments where rewatching this, I was not impressed with how they delivered some of the stuff. And granted, they're all young and they weren't paid a lot for this film. And it's like, hey, yeah, this will be fun. And it looks a university project kind of thing, but it was pretty sad in a lot of spots. So I didn't buy it.
I agree.
My other one that didn't age, we've already talked about this, but it's Paul Partaine's performance. You talk about the performances and when I went back and watched the commentaries and I found out it was very intentional and he was trying to alienate the rest of the cast. I was like, okay, I can forgive some of what he did on screen.
Yeah.
But even for someone that was trying to be annoying, it was poorly acted, annoying behavior. And so maybe this is why I thought Sally actually did a good job, because the scene when Terry's gone off and it's just the two of them and they're bantering or bickering back and forth, she comes off so much stronger in that scene because of how bad he is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. And Sam, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, I just think too, I know there's a reason for it, but the lack of blood splatter, gore, like when you go in and this is going to be a slasher movie, you expect a little bit more. And when you look at the fact that they wanted this to have a PG rating in the end, and I know that, yeah, it's intentional, but you go in and I remember watching this as a teenager being like, this movie's so gory, like this slasher movie, like it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Where's the massacre? Where is the blood? Where is the blood?
I did have one more. Can I give you one more?
Absolutely.
He knocked her out with a broom? ?
Well, he hit her several times.
With a broom?
Well, the broom handle.
Oh my God.
They made them different in the 70s.
Was it oak?
The finest broom in the South.
I don't know. He just sits there and he's beating her and I just, come on. And that could be a trope or whatever, but she's just screaming and falling down and then she's out. And I was not impressed with that. And then she wakes up tied up.
They shot that whole scene 17 times.
17
Oh my
times?
gosh.
Well, from her going into the barbecue stand to that was about 17 takes. Her coming in and falling to her knees, they did multiple times.
Right.
The broom attack, they did multiple times, to the point where the actor Jim Sydow, who played the old man, was feeling really bad. Like, this is just becoming intolerable. And so he wasn't hitting very hard. And Marilyn's like, they need to get the shot. So she said to him between takes, like, just give it to me. And so he finally just like beats the crap out of her with that broom handle.
Shut up, you bitch hog.
You're right. Like, it's not going to knock her out, but like the filming of that scene
would probably, if I was hit with this broom handle over 17
takes,
yeah, that's
multiple
crazy.
times.
I wonder if that's just the inexperience of the filmmaking, or if he just couldn't get it to look right for 17 takes. That just seems ridiculous.
I don't know. I just think they were just trying to get it right.
Yeah.
I think it's the inexperience. We got to be right. And it's like, you had it. You had it on one, but...
Yeah, exactly. We'll do another one just in case. No, that didn't look good. Another one.
Speaking of doing things over and over and over again, we're moving into most gratuitous scene.
Hey, look at that segue, eh?
For this category, we were looking at those moments in the film that go too far. This could be gore or violence, but it can also be an overuse of something by the director that impacts the way the film is viewed. So, Chad, why don't you start us off with one here?
There was one scene in the van that really set me off, and I just wrote, the guy is not that funny. The laughing of the girl, he says something, and I can't even remember, but she just keeps laughing over and over, and she's hysterically laughing. It's the one that's reading a horoscope.
Terry.
My God.
She's just flirting. It's just flirtatious laughing.
That's enough. That was not flirtatious. It was, it was so bad. And that could go to the acting. It could be whatever, but it was overdone. I fast forwarded a little bit, actually. So I was so mad.
Because Saturn was in retrograde? Isn't that what she said? I don't know what she said exactly, but...
And retrograde is always bad.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know.
Right. Sam, what do you have?
The finger sucking scene? Oh my gosh. I hid behind my hands because I did not want to see it anymore. It was so unsettling to me. And then like from the way they cut it, it's like it lasted so long that she like passed out, or like they sucked so much blood out. It was so upsetting to me to see that.
Yeah, because they only cut like a little slash on her finger, right? And they actually cut her for that because they couldn't get the blood to work.
Ew, I want to suck your blood. Another Dracula. There we go.
I love the voice too, by the
So yeah, the cutting of the finger is Gunnar couldn't get the pump to work right to get the blood to go down the knife, and they kept doing the take over and over again. And this was 20 some odd hours into shooting on that day. And so there's different stories. Gunnar claims that when no one was looking, he took the tape off the knife and just cut Marilyn without her knowing.
Just a little stabby stab.
And so he's like, and that's why her reaction is so strong. Daniel Pearl, the cinematographer, says that it was a agreement between Marilyn and Gunnar to do that. And then Tobe Hooper in another of the ones says that it was just a choice we did because it wasn't working. So who knows what the true story is. But then Tobe Hooper says, I guess we'd have to talk to Jack, who plays the grandpa, and just ask him, did he taste blood?
Ew, so unsettling.
It was very unsettling in the way the grandpa reacts to it too when he's sucking the blood.
Like he's suckling.
He's suckling.
It's like that whole scene was...
Oh, I hated it. That was probably the worst scene for me to watch out of all of them.
The mouth noises and the moaning of enjoyment.
And it went on so long.
I just really wanted to hang on that one because that was also one of my most gratuitous scenes. That's all I wrote. Gratuitous. The finger sucking.
Literally, I wrote, the finger sucking with a question mark.
Chad, what do you got?
I had, when they entered the house, I thought the shots of the feathers and the bones went long. I thought there could have been some quick shots to see how kind of freaky and weird it was. But there was some long hanging, panning shots on the feathers and then the bones and then the lamp and then other parts of the house. And by the time the scene was finished, we get it. Yeah, they're crazy. Okay, so that was one of them.
Yeah, they really wanted to showcase the set design and the set dressings.
They sure did.
The feathers.
The feathers especially.
Feather pillows. Rest in peace.
The chicken in the bird cage. Okay.
Well, and I was actually reading that oftentimes on farms, they would actually use the chickens as like an alarm system. So they would make noise when people came in. So I'm not sure, but...
Well, that chicken didn't do his job.
No, that chicken didn't do shit. It just it just shed it all over the floor. Yeah, I agree completely with that one. It looked like dollar store kind of props.
Yeah, right.
As
it
well.
Just seemed kind of cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, and it cheapened it, I think.
Do you know where they got all those bones from?
I read India.
They got a skeleton from India.
Yeah.
Because it was cheaper to buy a full skeleton for medical purposes from India than it would have been to buy a plastic one. And then the other one was someone from the production had a friend who was a vet, and any of the animals that he was treating that didn't make it, right? People would have to pay money for their pets to be cremated. If the cremation wasn't paid for, the pets weren't claimed, he would then take these back. I don't know where, but he would just basically had a hole full of all these unclaimed dead animals.
So the vet is Leatherface, is what we're saying here.
So when they're like, we need animal parts and bones for this film, it's like, I got a guy. So they went into the hole and just like pilfered out all these bones. For me, the other gratuitous scene was the meat hook and the chainsaw that kills Kirk, that scene. I wouldn't say it was gratuitous. Like, it's not gratuitous for gore, but the implied violence. And like, we talk about the lack of blood. We talk about the lack of actual effects that show the killing. But when he picks her up and then like hangs her on the meat hook, she's got a bare back, and so you can just imagine that thick metal going into there.
Yeah,
she's screaming, and then he takes that chainsaw and we assume is decapitating Kirk.
Yeah,
it really unsettled me. Again, it's not from gore, but it's just that implied violence. And I think this is one of those movies where, you know, they talk about let your audience imagine.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was their intention. I think it was more budget and also that trying to get a PG rating. My mind just went off on that. So
well, and that's funny that you said that here, because I was going between whether it stood the test of time or whether it was too much. And I was going between the two, and I actually put that under stood the test of time, because while watching, that was a scene that I'm like, ooh, that's like horrific. And you can imagine it. And she's still screaming, and you can imagine like,
well, and she's trying to reach for it
and trying to lift herself up.
She's like, yeah, it was super disturbing. Yeah.
And then I kind of agreed too with Kirk's death as well. Like the convulsing on the floor, the pig squealing noises. I felt like that whole part was kind of upsetting too.
When he's clubbing him?
Yeah.
That one? Yeah.
Oh.
For the listeners, in the past, I've often watched the commentary of films. I've watched 4 commentaries on this one. So that's why I keep coming in with things. For the scene, he was supposed to only hit Kirk once and then drag him off camera, but they had a rubber mallet, but it was a steel handle, so it was still rather heavy. So when he hit him and he collapsed, Gunnar Hansen realized like, oh, I hit him too hard, and then sort of hesitated. He's like, I guess I'll hit him again. And
the double tap.
I hit him too hard. I'll hit him again.
Well, because Kirk started like convulsing, and the reason he did that was Toby and him had been talking about sometimes when victims get hit in the head, the skull can shatter and the bone can go in and cause seizures.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was miscommunication or like literal misdirection by the director. Kirk thought he had to convulse. Gunnar Hansen thought he only had to hit once. He swung down too hard with the steel handle because of its weight. He actually blistered Kirk's head with the rubber, rubbing it. And so then Kirk started convulsing because he thought that's what he was supposed to do. So then Gunnar's like, I guess I'll hit him again. Didn't hit him nearly as hard that time.
I hope not.
But this was also his first shot in the film. And so he was extremely nervous. So he's just, and then he picks up Kirk, and I guess he like threw him into the wall head first.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. They just hated Kirk and Sally.
And then shut the door, and they were just like, we got it. That's our shot.
That's the shot. Which, to be fair, that might have been the shot.
Yeah.
It was really well done. And that one still freaks me out today.
The sliding door,
yeah,
right?
that sliding door when he brings it in. Yeah, it's super freaky. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Too bad he had to get hurt to get the shots. Yeah.
It sounds like everybody on this movie got hurt in some way.
They just hated everybody.
Safety's just out the window. We need the shot.
It's the olden days, guys. Come on.
Do what you're told.
Chad, do you have another gratuitous?
I thought the whole hitchhiker driving scene went on too long. I just got bored.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets crazy, and there were so many times where I just thought, you're not letting him out now. He's still in here. He cuts himself. Mm-hmm. The guy takes the razor. It was just way too long.
And it doesn't make any sense. Like, you would have kicked that guy out so fast. The minute he starts acting weird, you're like, no.
Almost as soon as he got in there, he said some weird stuff. When they were talking, when they passed the slaughterhouse, he was talking about, oh, no, those guns are bad. You got to use the sledgehammer. That's a good way to kill him. There were way too many red flags to keep that guy in the car, and it just went on too long. And again, because the acting wasn't stellar, it just was the rough go.
Between him and Franklin, it's just like, oh God, kill me. Leatherface, come here.
Stop interacting with each other.
And it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit and they're driving down the road. Like imagine being the other cast in that van just be like, let's just get the scene.
Could you imagine being the driver who has very few lines throughout that whole scene and you're just having to be in there?
I do love the turn where it's like he takes the picture like, that'll be $2. Like some sort of like Vegas sidewalk hawker. I took your picture. That'll be $2. Again, red flag. And then what does he do? Burns it with gunpowder. Yes. Red flag. No, now let's hand him a knife.
Let's keep him in our van. Let's just keep him along. Also, the contents in that van. How long was that trip? Because there was not a lot of luggage, but also there's the empty coffee can that we already talked about before. Yeah. But if you look around at the contents in that van, you're like, what?
What are they doing on this road trip?
How far have you traveled?
An umbrella, a guitar, and a bunch of his other assorted items.
It is. It's just like literally a junk drawer. Like the guitar is all you need.
It's like they looked up some pictures of what hippies take when they're on vacation, and that's what they threw into the van.
And they're all, it's like sacks as well. Like it's not even like luggage or anything.
They got the ones with the stick in the little.
It was the olden days, guys.
I've got an apple and a banana wrapped in this.
And my can of beans and a can opener. Hi, everybody. This is your host, Mike here. I'm just interrupting this podcast to let you know that our Texas Chainsaw Massacre episode is actually going to be a two-parter. Because of the length of the episode, we felt it better to split it over 2 weeks than to have it be one longer running episode. So be sure to come back next week to hear the rest of the categories and our bonus features and to hear the rest of the discussion. Thank you for joining us for this part. See you again in part 2.